Welcome back to State of Texas In Depth. We are just a couple of days before the primary runoffs. State Rep Dan Branch and State Senator Ken Paxton both want the Republican nomination to be the next Attorney General. Paxton led in the primary, but the momentum has changed after it became public that Paxton broke the law and was fined by the Texas State Securities Board for seeking investment clients without a license. Now, several of the police unions that endorse Paxton have pulled out. The most recent one, the McKinney Police Association. That's Paxton's hometown. Both candidates have shared sharp jabs in their ads. In his advertisement, Paxton showed he has support of Senator Ted Cruz while painting Branch as a liberal Republican. KXAN's Josh Hinkle sat down with Representative Branch to talk about the race and several issues that could come up if he becomes Attorney General.
So, back on the primary night, you finished 33.5, and your opponent now, Ken Paxton, had 44%. What's changed in that time since then?
Well, the polls have changed, and so we've caught him and passed him in the latest polls, and so we're feeling good about things, and we're making the case for being a qualified Attorney General. You know, I'm the only one who has out offering my viewpoints, my legal reasoning with briefs before the U.S. Supreme Court and the Fifth Circuit. My opponent's not authorized to argue in either of those courts. So we're making the case that we have to have a qualified Attorney General, an effective conservative who's gotten things done. And of course, my opponent has had this admission of multiple violations of our ethics and securities laws, which the admission's effectively admitting to a felony. And so he's got a lot of open questions for the last 3 weeks. He won't appear with me. He won't come to any joint appearance and talk to the people about these serious questions that people have about the securities law violations, the federal securities investigation that may be taking place, the criminal, civil issues, the ethics issues, possible disciplinary issues. So there's a lot of issues here about qualifications and whether or not he's not only not qualified but disqualified.
Some of the police associations that had endorsed him previously, including his own hometown, McKinney, have taken their endorsement away. What does that really say for a position that would be one of the top law enforcement positions in the state?
Well, Josh, it says a lot. And first, when the city of Allen, the Allen Police Association unendorsed, and then his own hometown, the McKinney Police Association, as you mentioned, unendorsed him because of the admission to a criminal act and the risk that he now poses if he were to be the Republican nominee, the risk he would pose to our ticket. And so this is a serious issue, and for him not to sort of cover this up and not address this issue and not come on and debate and have a forum where he can be asked the serious questions, it's irresponsible. We're now seeing more and more congressmen come out for us. We're seeing more and more state Republican Executive Committee members unendorse. Last week, Bonnie Lugo unendorsing Paxton's campaign, endorsing us. So the good news for us is we're getting up a lot of momentum, and we look really strong coming into the election.
One of the big issues that the current Attorney General has had to deal with is abortion and legislation that's been passed related to that. One of the things that Ken Paxton has said about you is that you voted on legislation that helped expand access to late-term abortions. How do you respond?
Well, this was reviewed actually by PolitiFact and deemed false. In fact, we've since had the largest pro-life organization, Texas Alliance for Life, endorse our campaign, and the head of that organization, even before they endorsed, say that this was blatantly false and that he resented Paxton using the unborn to score political points. So I think this is just sort of mud that he's been slinging, making all kinds of wild claims in his TV commercials, and we're just trying to get the facts out there. Senator Paxton, answer these questions or pull out of the race, because we can't have an Attorney General that's subject to civil and criminal liability.
What do you think when you hear him saying things like, you support giving illegal immigrants driver's licenses?
He's, in fact, Josh, that's laughable. He's the one that in the 2011 session voted against a piece of legislation that I supported, which required that you had to show legal residence or citizenship in order to get your driver's license renewed. So some of this stuff has been deemed blatantly false, or others are just laughable. You know, calling me a liberal. You know, that's an old tripe. You know, here's someone who spent his life working for the Republican Party, helping to get Ronald Reagan reelected here in Texas, working for the election of George W. Bush, President Bush. And so this is. We've seen this before, you know, late slinging mud because all of a sudden he's falling behind in the polls.
One of the things that many people know you best for is your leadership role with higher education at the House. How would you use that knowledge for what you'd be doing as Attorney General if you win that post?
Well, I've done a lot of things in the House and risen up to the Legislative Budget Board, or whether that's serving on Appropriations Committee or on Public Ed and Learning School Finance, which is always an issue for Attorney Generals in terms of our school finance litigation that seems to always be ongoing. But the higher ed space, we push for conservative solutions, more Tier 1 universities, solving the top 10% rule. So what I've learned from being a legislator, I'll take with me to the Office of Attorney General, and I'll understand legislative intent. I'll very much understand the lawmaking process. So when people ask me to give the Attorney General opinion, then when I opine as to what the legislature meant, I'll have a keen understanding of what the legislative branch of government had in mind when they were passing legislations because of my 12 years of experience.
Obviously, you have a legal interest and you know, a higher ed interest. I kind of wonder what your thoughts were on the whole Wallace Hall impeachment idea that's going on right now for UT.
Well, I know the regents are dealing with that. I know there's a special transparency committee that I'm not involved with, so I'm going to let them focus on those issues. We try to stay focused on the higher education reform issues, and we have held hearings, plenty of hearings, and been very interested in making sure we get the most out of our higher ed, that we keep tuition down, that we keep the price of books down. So I've been focused on the big picture. I'm not trying to get involved in personalities.
But it will go to the full House for consideration.
It may, and if it does, then I'll take up the issue, of course, and do my homework like I have in the past on all the issues, and ultimately I'll have to make a decision.
700 lawyers would be in your office if you do become Attorney General. How do you think you do things differently from what Attorney General Abbott has done?
No, you're right. It's over 700 lawyers right now, over 4,000 individuals in the Office of Attorney General. It's, in a sense, the state's large law firm, and I've had experience working my way up through very large law firms in the state and building my own law firm now at a large firm. So I've had the opportunity to hire lawyers and manage lawyers, and so I think I'll be well suited to make sure we get the most out of the agency. And I've also had the chance under then Governor Bush to run a state agency on his behalf, and so I think I've got the skills and the judgment and the experience to do an effective job. I want to build on the successes that General Abbott has had. I look forward to him serving with him when he's governor, and I think there's always areas for improvement. He's done an outstanding job. He's been our longest serving Attorney General, but I look forward to building on those successes with as many best practices as we can find.
Many people say that General Abbott has, you know, traditionally been someone who picks fights with the federal government, maybe doesn't focus on state issues as much. Do you feel like you'd still follow that same suit?
Well, I think that's a serious issue right now. The federal overreach is dramatic, and I think we have to have a tough, measured response. And so when the federal government starts encroaching on areas that have been reserved to our states or individual liberties, then the job of the Attorney General is to stand up to this federal government. And that's the reason why we got to have a strong Attorney General. We can't have someone who is beholden to the U.S. Attorney General or a U.S. attorney, or someone that's at risk of being indicted by a local district attorney. We have to have a strong Attorney General. And we have to, for the good of the state, push back against, at least for the next 2 years, this current administration in Washington. And so to have a hobbled or impudent Attorney General would really be a setback and not fulfilling the legacy that General Abbott has set.
Some of your fellow Republicans called for you to actually drop out of the race after the primary. What do you say to them now?
I saw that. One of those who signed the letter is now in his own runoff and way behind, trailing over in the Woodlands area. So I thought that was an interesting stunt by the Paxton campaign. And I noticed that he lost several signatories. He didn't get as many signatories as he originally had support him. We've got, Josh, a strong majority of the Republican House members, 55. And so we are, I feel really good about our chances. I feel really good about the backing all across the party, from the Tea Party chairman, Alan Fletcher, and Vice Chair Dwayne Bohack, to all folks from the Panhandle to South Texas to Central Texas to every Republican House member in Harris County has endorsed our campaign. So I feel like we got very strong support. And now, if you look at our sheriffs, we have 40 sheriffs. If you look at our district attorneys, they're coming in droves, and people are unendorsing the Paxton campaign and coming to our side. So the momentum for us is good.
Now, KXAN did reach out multiple times to have Senator Ken Paxton come on this program. His campaign offered a spokesman, but not the candidate. Paxton's spokesman did issue a comment about what he called Branch's silly statement that Paxton would be disqualified to be Attorney General. He said Dan Branch is trying to hide his moderate record of support for driver's licenses for illegal immigrants and his lobby work for unions by making absurd claims he knows to be false, just as any first-year law student would also know to be false. Still ahead, we wrap up all of the policy and politics ahead of this primary runoff with our roundtable. Morgan Smith from the Texas Tribune and KXAN's own Kevin Schwaller joins us when State of Texas In Depth returns.